Good morning
All
or
right.
afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We starting our webinar in a few minutes, just letting everybody join us. So we have here the ORMIT Cortex, cheaper than free to PostgreSQL migration solution, and we're going to be hosted by Patrick, the CEO of RENAPS, and of course Michel and Marc, our partners from Splendid Data.
Thank you, Stephen. Should we kick it off? I think we're good. Yes, perfect. All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's exciting today. We're gonna launch the ORMIT Cortex 2.0, and so without any further ado, let's kick off the webinar. So quickly, at a very high level today, we'll introduce ourselves. We're going to be talking about breaking free from Oracle's grip. Is it possible? How? And what's ORMIT Cortex 2.0, the new version enhanced of the famous tool to migrate from Oracle database to PostgreSQL. We are going to have a case study that we're going to be going through of ORMIT Cortex migration comparison with Ora2 PG. This is the cheaper than free comparison of a real case study, a very recent one. We'll do a demo and open it up for questions and answers. So quickly, my name is Patrick Hamou. I'm CEO of RENAPS. I have also a technical background. I'm an Oracle DBA, and I've been in the market, and RENAPS has been around for 20 years. Michel and Marc, I'll let you introduce yourselves.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Patrick. My name is Michel Schopgens, one of the founders of Splendid Data and the CEO, although I have a technical background. And I'm taking care of a lot, but except what we call finance and CTO, and that's where Marc will introduce himself.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Marc Angenent. I'm, as Michel already said, CTO of Splendid Data and also responsible for delivery management.
Thank you, Michel. Thank you, Marc. So maybe a quick review of who's RENAPS, what do we do? We've been around for 20 years now. Doesn't make me very young, but RENAPS is already 20 years old. We're a company driven by very high levels of quality standards. We are an Oracle partner with a lot of open source expertise. We've done a lot of projects through the years. And in terms of size, who we are, we're about 60 experts. So we're modest size IT company based in Montreal and New York. And how do we work? What do we do? We have a center of excellence where I am today, based in Montreal. We do projects. Different kinds of projects, we'll look into them. RENAPS on Demand, which is a managed services type of team extension, as well as full or hybrid managed services. We also have a separate company division doing just staffing. So the type of services that we do, what do we do? Well, managed services is the main point. A lot of Oracle, open source, PostgreSQL, MySQL, then also application development maintenance, including modernization and migrations from one technology to another, and then hardware, cloud, and licensing optimization. So we do have a lot of technology partnerships with Oracle. Lots of red in this slide, but we're not only an Oracle partner. In terms of variety of expertise, about 35 different type of expertise within RENAPS. We do have the largest Oracle migration team in North America. So when we talk about migration team, both on the application as well as the database side. So those two facets of the migration. And we are trusted by about 100 customers. One way that we provide services, the most popular way at RENAPS is called RENAPS on Demand. This is basically just a team extension. So we are here. You can access the whole technical team, whether Oracle database, PostgreSQL, application development, everything is accessible directly. So this is just to let you know how do we work with customers. Back to you, Michel, about Splendid.
Yep. Yeah, we founded the company in 2013 in the Netherlands. We're a product-based company, so we develop software, so really the technology part. And our go-to-market approach is indirect, so we primarily say for 95% of our business, we work with partners globally. We have created 3 solutions. It's our migration scoping. I will go into deep depth in a later stage. The Cortex, and we have a product called Postgres Pure. It's a subscription-based product based on PostgreSQL and enriched with a lot of open source components. So you have an enterprise environment.
Awesome. Thank you. So, well, we have a splendid partnership with Splendid Data, working great together. Where RENAPS provide, IT services, maintenance support, and project expertise to carry these projects and migrate databases to PostgreSQL. Splendid is our technology partner, as you just saw, is the company that developed and is continuing to evolve all these great tools to migrate or to deploy to a new managed PostgreSQL environment. And ORMIT Cortex is the tool which comes out of this partnership. Great. All right. So break free from Oracle's grip. If we look and start into this, well, we're seeing more and more companies today that are looking to move and to migrate, sometimes just re-platform, but many and more times we see customers wanting to migrate from an Oracle database to something else. And there's a reason for that. Sometimes they want to make their environment more uniform and standardize their platform. But we see in terms of support, one of the reasons is also to make the environment and the company free from any vendor locking. So that's an important facet and reason why customers want sometimes to migrate from Oracle database to something else. The licensing costs, sometimes the maintenance costs, or Oracle is high maintenance, very expensive. And Oracle is not that easy to deploy into a cloud environment. You have a lot of restrictions. You can sometimes, depending on what you have, it becomes very expensive to go into specific cloud. Bringing your own license is sometimes a very expensive way to get there. And why PostgreSQL specifically? Everybody knows that MySQL is there, MongoDB, MariaDB. But PostgreSQL is really the one that is the closest relational database management system to Oracle. And the reason why, well, there's first, the most complicated part of any migration is the code. So you have a lot of function, procedure, packages in a database, and these are not easy to carry and translate into a different language. You have a lot of business logic embedded into your database. And well, PostgreSQL is the one that has the most mature comparison to PLSQL with the PGSQL programming language. It's also a database that's very scalable with a sophisticated locking mechanism, meaning that it's something also similar to the Oracle way of managing data and information. Well, PostgreSQL is also then makes you very free in terms of deployment. You'll be able to go to any cloud platform, including a hybrid environment, and it will get you into your strategy of maybe reducing your Oracle footprint if that's the case. Well, Oracle database is very specific. It's more than a database, it's more of a platform. And what you get into an Oracle database is a large variety of data types, data integrity functionalities, unique keys, primary keys, foreign keys, all of these. Concurrency and performance type of functionalities are also very specific. But if you look at PostgreSQL, why we like that particular platform is because it's the one that will give you the most similarity with the Oracle database. And if we compare features, this is very, very high level. So of course, Oracle has the Enterprise Edition. PostgreSQL is open source, so you will get most of the functionalities of an enterprise just by deploying PostgreSQL and then adding packages that will give you or mimic some functionalities that you get from Oracle. And there is no licensing, of course, for an open source. Oracle requires some expensive options such as active data guard, multi-tenant partitioning. Many of these are already there in PostgreSQL through solution packages that you can add sometimes or just by default. You have a large community of support for Postgre, and in terms of cloud deployment, you are completely free if you are in real, true native PostgreSQL. So now, how do you get there? ORMIT Suite stands for Oracle Migration Tool. It's a suite of tools that RENAPS has developed through the years, and that now includes tools from our partners such as Splendid for Cortex specifically. And so ORMIT is a suite of tools comprising that will help automate and migrate databases, but also forms application from one version to another, from one platform to another. So just to look into quickly what's the full ORMIT suite. Well, we have this suite of tools right here. Don't want to spend too much time today on the other ones. We do all those type of migrations from reports to Jasper, from Oracle Forms to Java. But today we'll really focus on Cortex and especially on the new version of Cortex. Well, what's Cortex? Well, it's a tool that will automate the migration. It will also assess, but migrate your database from Oracle to PostgreSQL. It will be native PostgreSQL compared to other things that you could find on the market. It's one of the only one that will really provide you that real freedom into actual open source. It's a proven technology. It's been around for many years. We used it. We have several successful projects, and we really like what it does and how it works. It provides, a solution to quickly get the value and recuperate all of your business logic into a new platform, but it will also make sure you don't forget anything. And this is something important once you will see the case study that we have for you. In terms of business value, well, of course, you reduce or eliminate all the risks of that migration. You make sure to keep all of your data, DDL, data definition language dictionary, as well as DML, so all your code. The learning curve for the developer will be minimal because you will find all of your existing code, but now into a new language, but by maintaining all of your business logic. And it will most definitely reduce and your cost and the time to get there. The case study is the best way to see it. I'll quickly, it gets you to do real native PostgreSQL, so there's no, vendor lock-in whatsoever. So you're actually going to be there. And it's an approach that's repeatable, consistent, industrialized, so you'll be able to run this same tool for 5 database or 500 database, it doesn't matter. We can really do this very quickly. All right, I tried to do it as quick as possible to get to the core. So Michel, maybe back to you. So let's dig into the new version of Cortex.
Yep. I will share my screen. Yes, right. It's working.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks so far, Patrick. Again, hello everybody. Cortex 2.0. Why 2.0? It was a long time. We started to develop Cortex, but we have all kinds of techies here, and they're used to Linux. And in general, if I look to our people, Linux people don't like user interfaces. They want command lines. So we released the first command line of version of Cortex approximately 4 or 5 years ago. But we saw that it must be more efficient. So we started to develop a year ago with a GUI-based version of Cortex so that you're more able to influence what you want to do. So it's a set of tools, but I will explain it later. It's fully integrated with what we call Podman and Cortex Cockpit. That's part of Red Hat. So that's where you can manage your technology. There's a graphical user interface to manage your assessments and migrations. What we also have added is extensive reporting, but also audit trails. So everything you do within Cortex, all kinds of settings, it's all recorded, so, and also reflected in reports, so that you always, hey, why is this not migrated? You can see, oh, I excluded this procedure or this table. We also added in the meantime the Oracle Locator spatial functionality to Postgres, which is an extension of Postgres, and Postgres is famous for its functionality, but now we also support the full-fledged Postgres functionality during the migration. And every time we get a lot of use cases also from our partners, and we use those use cases to improve the migration process on a daily basis. And it's always funny because we always get surprised how creative developers can be. I always say, give two developers the same functional design, and at the end they will have totally different code, but have the same results. So, and our challenge is always to find those. Okay, this is also possible to do. So, and then we adjust our software that also supports those different ways of implementing things in Oracle. In Oracle, sorry. We have a migration approach, and Patrick already said, some clients have 5 databases, but we also have clients who have 1,000+ databases. And the first question is, how do I get there? How do I get from Oracle to Postgres? And looking at all those databases. And one of the things we learned in the past is that we might have to make things in a very early stage clear what you're facing as a client when you start migrating. So we developed a solution which is able to collect some specific catalog views from your Oracle databases. We use that output in what we call migration scoping, and during the migration scoping, we're able to qualify and estimate time needed to migrate for each database. And we always say the very simple ones and the simple ones, and that is in average 60% of your Oracle environments. You don't need to assess. They are so simple for Cortex. Just start migrating and you will see some will need no time or some need an hour to finalize. And the more complex one, we always say, always perform an assessment. Then you get the real depth insights of what's going on and what's not going on in your database. I will go in depth for each step. Scoping. You see the same picture again. Same flow, but you see there's a qualification model in it, and the qualification model is related to Cortex. So the qualification model knows exactly what Cortex is capable of to decide whether it's a simple or a complex database. But it also has what we call consolidation estimation model. It knows exactly from the Cortex metrics how much time it will need to finalize such a database. And for the very simple ones and the simple ones, you get an exact number of man hours needed. And for the more complex ones, so these two, you get a bandwidth, because we use also scoping for planning purposes. So how much time do I need overall? How can I select first the simple ones? So that's the starting point of making your plan from getting rid of Oracle. As a last step, we use all the output. It's in a data warehouse, and we do always an expert analysis to see are there odd things in some cases, and we have scripting available which make all kinds of selection. We say, okay, for instance, we see sometimes you have some medium and complex databases, but knowing of some details, we say, okay, you can migrate these without an assessment because, for instance, there's only one utility used, which is for us complex. But if it's only one, then we most of the time we know the use cases. Okay, make it a what we call a category 3 or 4, no assessment. And all the results are shared by the client. So you get for each database, and this is static, an HTML which you can hover over, and you will see all the details what are found during the scoping. And this is the spreadsheet. It's a subset of a much bigger spreadsheet which we did for a client for approximately 270 databases. And here you see the categories, here you see the bandwidth, and here you see the exact amount of days needed. And we always reflect it into, okay, initial migration and initial adjustment, and rework after or during testing. And what we see, because companies try to do it by hand, but the estimate is you will need 4 hours per database to assess and to analyze as, okay, what are the complexities, how much time do I think I need, if you're able to do it. So that goes up. So if you have to do 600 databases, that's a case we're currently working on, you need approximately 300 man days or work days to do it. Using scoping, we only need 5 days. And the good news about those 5 days is that's including the expert analysis and producing all the output. It's a uniform way of working. So for each database, the same model is applied. So that's already a challenge with 50. But if you have 600 databases, try to use the same model all the time with different people. And as we tend to say, it's a small investment compared to those 300 days you have to do. You get a smart review and a great insight. Then we have the Cortex assessment and migration. We always say it's a container-based solution. So we use Podman and we use Cockpit. And via that mechanism, I will show you later, you are able to run or start a container. And in this case, a container is rather complex because it contains a Postgres database, because that's your target environment. And there's not only the results of the Postgres, but there are also the input we get from the Oracle databases, all your settings you're using. That's always, sorry. Yeah. And there's all kinds of blocks. So we always start with, we provide a script to extract the catalog views. So that's the metadata, technical data of the Oracle database. So we never touch and never look into the real data that's in the database. We're only interested in the technical data, the meta views, the metadata. As soon as we have those, we're able to load them into the container, upload it into the container, and from there on we start loading it as a first step already in the Oracle database, so that all the data we received via the catalog views is already stored in a smart way into Postgres, which makes our life easier during the migration. Then we have what we call the object migration, the DDL. That's always the first step. Why is it the first step? Because your code is heavily relying on your DDL. And what we always say, there's so many dependencies between the code objects and the data objects, but also between the code objects themselves. And that's the most challenging part, to keep all those dependencies in place. And that saves you the time and money for manual adjustments, but also for later stages. There's also a code checker available. The code checker checks every piece of code if it's technical correct, PL, PG, SQL. We have a code formatter, so you can say, okay, this is my standard way of programming. You can create a profile, you can use standard profiles. both steps, the data object migration and the code object migration, produce a lot of reports. Now you can, I will show you in the next slide, you can do a lot of things here. But at the end stage, or so, if you say now my migration is, my initial migration is the maximum what I can get, you export everything and all your results will become available in a Git repository. So that means not only the migrated results, but everything which is in Postgres. So that's your starting point to switch to your DTAP environment. It creates a Jira population file so that everything you need to adjust manually is reflected in Jira issues. So that's your workload for finalizing your migrations. And of course, you get all the reports that is produced by Cortex.
Basically, you have full control over every step of this process up to the end. And
sure.
We'll see this in action after, which will make it easier to see.
And to mention, we're starting with Oracle 10. That's the oldest version we migrate. We should now then faced with Oracle 8 and Oracle 9. We say that's a special project. We can do it, but for the happy flow, we say we start with version 10 of Oracle, and the target versions of PostgreSQL are version 11 until 14, and so that are the current supported releases of the community of PostgreSQL. And now we're already starting to prepare version 15 of Postgres, and to be able that as soon as version 15 of Postgres is released, Cortex is already able to migrate to version 15 of PostgreSQL. The process flow. Now, I always said you create a container from an image, and you can choose. I take the Postgres 11 image or the 13 or 14. That's your choice when you're doing the migration. Upload those CSV files, load the catalog views. That's everything is pushed in the Postgres database in the container. Then you start your data object migration. And we always say, first do without settings, just do an assessment, what we call all the standard settings. I'm sorry, it's when you use your mouse. Then you can decide, okay, I want to do some adjustment. We said, don't, for the first time, go to your code object migration. You see all kinds of reports are produced. And then you go back and say, okay, what do I want to adjust? Do I want to include or exclude specific objects? Do I want to change a setting, which I will explain later, or Mark will help me with that. And then you can rerun as much and often as you want to, that you say, okay, now I see so much, this is the percentage which is done by Cortex. Patrick already mentioned there are some differences, and it is sometimes in data types, but no blocking issues. There are data types available which can solve it, but you have to influence that. Sometimes you will find foreign key mismatches. It's rather technical, but Oracle is much more flexible in those things, more liberal, which you can discuss. Is it good or bad? No discussion, but PostgreSQL is very strict. You need the same data type for your primary, foreign key, all those relations. And there's always a nice discussion about partitioning. We see a lot of cases where partitioning is used in Oracle for performance reasons. And we always say, start without, because so far, all the cases we have seen, Postgres was performing better without than with the partitioning. Only when you use partitioning for functional reasons, then you can say, okay, these partitions I want to be included in the migration because we use it for functional reasons. And yeah, what Patrick already said, Oracle is an environment. So it's not just a database, but it also has queuing in it. It has scheduling in it, and specific built-ins for file transfer, mailing. And if you look to the way of how open source is thinking. They leave this more component-wise. So they said, don't include everything in one thing, but use components which have their own function. And that means that if you have extensive scheduling, we say, okay, yes, that we're able to migrate that. It will be also manual for a part, but always use an external component. And for specific, that's why we, during the assessment, but also at later stage, we always discuss the use cases. Why are you using queuing? Why are you using scheduling? And in most cases, people say, yeah, oh, queuing is from the past. We don't need it anymore. Or yes, we use scheduling, but it's only for maintenance reasons. Yes, we use mailing. Yeah, it's not mail list, but it's pure for maintenance reasons. That's okay. If that's the way, then we migrate it this way, and then it will be solved. The demo.
I think we're right on time, about 30 minutes in. Perfect.
Yeah. Oh, I did something wrong. Sorry. I'm going back. You see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, and not to fake you, but I prepared already the migration, but I will use it to explain while Cortex is running with the actual migration. It's the same migration, but that gives me a little bit more flexibility. Now here you have Cockpit and Podman, and you see there's a special tab created by our software where you have your Cortex containers. Here you have the 4 releases, so 11 and 14, so that these are the different Postgres version you're able to use. And here are your containers. Now I start, and I call it webinar actual. So run the container, and you already see he starts running the container. It will take some time because he has to install more or less all the software and create the database. I will open this one to let you see. So I ran it an hour ago. You have always 2 ports, what you need for the database and for the user interface. You see which version or which version of the image you're using. I go back.
You can also do some maintenance, deleting it.
Yeah, you can do your maintenance. So you can say, okay, this container I don't need anymore. You can delete it, so that it's gone, and you can focus on what you need to do. I open Cortex. So you saw the previous one. He switches to the same tab. As I said, the first thing I'm going to do is upload those CSV files. I take it's a use case from a client. So what I do, select the CSV files and copy them into the container. So they are copied now from my laptop to the server where this is running. It's finalized, everything is okay. If it's not okay, it sticks to the previous and tells you what's wrong with your CSV files. As I explained, now I'm going to load all the CSV data, the metadata in the PostgreSQL database.
We can see from here all the different types of metadata being addressed.
Yeah.
We have views, DB links being done.
Yeah.
Constraints.
Yeah. Then I go to the next step, the data object migration. If you look at the picture, so that's the first step we're going to do, really starting to migrate. I start the migration. And now you see all the content, what it's converting, all the tables, the sequences, that's where he starts with. And we also, this is the easiest part for Cortex. And it takes, in this case, 1 minute, and your DDL is migrated. And The only thing we so now and then postpone to the next stage is when you have complex views, because they are part of your DDL, but we see it also as business logic. So if they can't be migrated during this step, we put it in the next step as to be done via the MIG lists. So the code migration will migrate at the end the views and those kind of things.
So you almost had enough time to grab a coffee for most of your table objects to be already migrated.
Yeah, this is now finalized, and
All right.
I will show you. But there are a lot of reports already, which I will explain in the other one. So those are there, and if you want to be sure, I can show you that the reports will be exactly the same in the one I prepared and the one that's actual. Go back to the migration again. I don't, and then I start the code object migration. There's approximately 7,000 lines of code in this database. That takes 6-7 minutes, but that's why I used the other one.
Already done to save some time.
Yeah, to save some time. So I go to the other one. Prepared, and then I have my reports. And I dive. There's always a nice one to look at.
Invalid objects.
So here you see the content of your organization. We always first check, are all the owners included which we need to do the migration? If there's an owner missing, yeah, you have to redo the creating of the CSV files, because if an owner is missing, that means that your code is not complete, or your table definitions are not complete. In this database, we see all the objects that are there. Now, funny enough, this is a production database. There's invalid code in the database. There are 20 views invalid. There's 2 functions. So for us, that's already a tick in the box towards the owner of the database. Hey guys, there's invalid code. What's going wrong? And sometimes people say, okay, leave it as this, because we don't migrate invalid code, because nobody knows if it's correct code or not. Or the client says, give me some time, I will clean it up and do deliver you the new CSV files, and then you can start the migration. Then we see the lines of code. Yeah, so approximately 7,000 lines of code, but you see a certain percentage is invalid. So this is a live case. This client said, give me some time, I will clean it. And because there are also some of those views which are really necessary. Okay, production, but it's their decision. Now you get details about what constraints, the indexes that are used. And other nice reports which we always check. We invalid. Here you get your details of your invalid code and your disabled objects. Here you see all the data types that are used in Oracle. But here we all see what went wrong during the code of the data object migration. Now, there are no migration errors, so 100% is done. Here you see some indexes. Those are postponed to the code migration because there's business logic in those indexes. Here you see the postponed views because it said, okay, this is real code. That goes to the next step, the code migration. In this case, no foreign key mismatches. There's a default error. Jira issues are raised for that, so that you know, okay, I have to adjust those. You don't need them for the next step of the migration. No data type errors, so it's a pretty clean migration.
Of course, you see all these steps, all these interim steps. Having a partner or a company such as RENAPS will help you get there. We will really drive all these steps for you and make sure. And yes, you would be able to participate definitely in some of the phases of the project, but just want to reassure you don't need to learn all of this, or there's no test right at the end of the of this demo.
Then what's always an interesting.
This is from the DML.
This is report 678 are for the DML, all your reporting, and there's a Jira population file I'll show you. So report 7 is interesting because that shows you what went well and what went wrong. So you see that 91%, nearly 92% of your code migration went well. So as you can see, from the 181 views, only 13 need manual adjustment. And for each manual adjustment, a Jira is raised. And so you see, that's why we come to this number. Then we say, okay, what's the time needed to do the manual adjustments? In this case, it's approximately 5 hours, working hours, but that's from expert level. And you see, if you have people on board with meteor level, because you need to really understand both Oracle and PostgreSQL, then you need more time, and juniors, of course, again, more time. And here you see the classes, and this is produced by the checker. The checker checks the code in the Postgres database, so you get all the Postgres errors, which, yeah, we see, okay, if it's this error, then from Postgres, then it will be a more complex adjustment, or if it's this code, it will be a simple adjustment. And here you see the detailed errors. Now, sometimes you have an unknown, and that's really, then the expert looks at it. It could be very simple, but could also something we don't know, or we have to digest, but we always qualify them as a complex adjustment for calculation purposes. Now this is the Jira population file, and report 8 is your auditing. In this case, it's very easy because we migrated everything standard. So these were the settings used. We didn't exclude any object from the migration. We didn't change any data type. We didn't change any collection type way of migrating. And sometimes you also see that there are DB links used in Oracle, and there's functionality within Cortex where you can set your details about, okay, this is what needs to be done for this DB link. Now, see if my other container is already finished. This is the actual. Let's see.
It'd be the same.
He's finished. I will show you, and that's the proof of the pudding. Let's take this one. Hopefully the number is the same. Yeah, 91.55 is done automatically. So that's the proof that I used exactly the same CSVs, the same version of Cortex, and nothing is tweaked so far. Now, and then, as I showed you in the diagram, here you can see your MIG lists. So you can exclude constraints, you can exclude foreign keys. Table partitioning is a different subject because we exclude from the beginning all partitioning. So tables are created without partitioning. But here you can say, okay, I want to partition this table, I want to migrate these partitions, and I want to migrate these subpartitions. So, and that's how you manage your whole migration. Next to that, and I'll show you, you have functionality to change your data types when necessary. If you look at foreign key mismatches, you are able to change these data types. Now, in this case, there are no linked tables, but here you can define your linked tables, and there are no collection types, but here you can set, standard, it will be migrated this way, but you can also choose another implementation way.
There are 2 ways of implementation.
Yeah, 2 ways: arrays,
array and temp tables.
And temp tables.
Yeah.
So that's why I have Marc next to me. Okay, let's switch back to the presentation again.
What are the settings?
Here,
No?
So basically that, how the tool does through the interface give you full control and automates a big part of these migrations. And for whatever manual needs to be done, it is clearly identified and Jira ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
from here, let's look at that case study.
Yeah. We see Order2PG is something for free. And funny enough, people spend over the years, even the big banks spend hundreds of millions or billions on Oracle, but they try to use a free tool to migrate away from Oracle. Okay, that's the case, but we're convinced that it should be done in a different way and it should be done better. So what we did, we have a partner like RENAPS, but then a partner called Atos. Probably a lot of you know Atos. It's a French organization, but global reach. They are all around the globe. They have their presence. So what we did, they provided a benchmark database with enough complexity, because if you start using a database with 10 tables and no business logic, that's not a real case. So we said we need a complex one, enough complexity. So it contains 53,000 lines of code, PostgreSQL. Atos performed the Order2PG because we said, okay, if we want to keep it clean, you do the Order2PG, you share the results with us. Give us the catalog views of this database, and we will do the same assessment and migration using Cortex. And we shared both results, and then we say, okay, these are the things we found together, and that's where. So so we took the latest version of Cortex and the latest version of Order2PG, and now you already start seeing odd things, because in your package bodies there are 1184 functions. Funny enough, Order2PG sees 64 functions.
This is so dangerous.
This is because, especially within a package body, functions and procedures are very related to each other. So there's a lot of dependencies, but you also use global variables.
Yes.
And if you miss those, then your whole structure is gone.
Exact.
They don't take the packages into account, and you see more things. So if we look at it, we see the Oracle database has 9,127 objects in it. We count exactly the same, but Order2PG counts 4,348. So you're missing already 52% of your code objects. Then we see there's PostgreSQL. I just said it's 153. No, it's 230,602, but that's including your commands. Commands don't need to be migrated in the sense of that is business logic needed for it. We take all the commands as for granted, and they will come back in your Postgres sources. So, but that's something we don't bother about. But what we have to bother about is the business logic, and that's where your value of your database is. There are a lot of high investment to create and to build that
business logic.
And there are also views involved. Now, we make an estimation during the assessment, and as you have seen, an assessment is already for us a migration. So we say, okay, you need 201 hours to finalize this database. And in this case, there is some scheduling and advanced queuing, but we have ignored because Order2PG ignores it also. Order2PG says during the assessment, you need 493 hours to finalize this database, the migration. But funny enough, it doesn't take into account that you're missing 1120 functions and procedures. Your main part of your business logic is gone. So if you calculate, we made an estimate. So suppose you need 2 hours per function and procedure in your packages. That means that instead of 493, you need 2,733 hours to finalize it. And we are convinced that try to do this manual and keep all the dependencies or get all the dependencies in place is a deadly job. So it will take too much time, and I think the risk of failing is pretty high. Now, more read the number and facts. ORMIT detects, the Cortex detects the same amount of objects as Oracle has. Oracle2PG is failing. This is a stunning number. It misses 95% of your code. So instead of 153,000 lines of code, it only takes 10,000 lines of code into account. Cortex gives you all kinds of insights, what went well, what went wrong, but also what wasn't migrated and what wasn't migrated. You see, we migrate 76% of all the code objects, all the objects that are in the database. So it's less than the demo I gave you, but it's also related to that there's queuing and scheduling in the database. And here again, 201 man hours. And here the 95, so you miss 1120 function procedures. And yeah, the 493 hours, if that's your basis for planning after an assessment, and you have to, and you find out it's 5 times more or 6 times more time than your whole planning, what you did as a starting point is, yeah, you can throw away. After the assessment, we did the migration. We changed 2 data types because in this case there were 2 foreign key mismatches that can influence your quality of code migration. So we used the data type remap functionality of Cortex, and because Oracle2PG standard migrates partitions, so we said okay, we do it the same. So we said all partitions should be migrated in this case. Now this is all man hours. It's the same amount because for us assessment and migrations is more the same. Necessary were to set in Oracle2PG also some settings. There are so many settings, and that I was glad that Atos was doing it, but they even had problems to see what we call the forest for the trees. What do I have to do to get some results? Now this is also, they did 10,000 lines of code. But the most annoying thing is, everything is delivered in a project structure, but it's not clear what is done, what is not done, what went well, what went wrong. So everything you have to find out yourself manually. Conclusions. And that was also the conclusion of Atos. It's Cortex is much more efficient and user-friendly and effective. And yeah, you really can master your assessment and migration. You're in control. You have all the information. Everything is there. It delivers detailed reports. It produces a Git repo. I hope most of you know what a Git repo is, but that's for version management. So that you can, after Cortex is finalized, you can all import everything in your DTAP environment. And it also delivers you the Jira population file, which you can include into your Jira to manage your adjustments. The time needed, so Cortex takes, for this case, the 153,000 lines of code, approximately 5 hours. But what is done during that time, not looking at the code of the object migration, the data object migration, but if you look at the code, it's going back and forth. So it sees, okay, now I'm missing this function. He looks in the list, oh, that function is available. I start first with that function, so that you can always keep your dependencies in place. And yeah, the 201 man hours, and we also have a price, but that is in the next slide. Now, Oracle2PG complexity usage and less effective, and we always say, especially when DML is involved, and you're not available to master your assessments and migration. So it's here, it's find your way, it's there, and there's no reporting. No reports after what to do after performing your migration. Find out yourself. now we said at least 2,733 man hours needed for expert level. Good news is it's for free.
Not sure it's such a
And then we have, okay, this is what I always said. Then we said, what's the business case? Suppose we took the rates. You have 25 man days, work days based on the 201 hours for manual adjustments. So that will take you $25,000. The usage of Cortex, $5,000. And then we go to order to PG. You have to do 340 man days based on the 2,703 working hours. So that cost will be $340,000 with a high risk because there's an awful lot of manual work. And manual work is always risky. So the less, the better. The good news, it's for free. But we say Cortex is cheaper than free if you compare those 340,000 with those 30,000, including the software used to do it. And even for this case, it's 91% cheaper with Cortex than with Ora2PG. People always ask, what are your competitors? Now, you see the Ora2PG. It's open source. AWS, dus the Amazon, they use SAT, but that's a clone of Ora2PG. They adjusted it, they made it better, but it's still now max 50% of your DDL and DML will be migrated automatically, and your target platform is AWS only, AWS. Then we have EDB. It's a competitor. I will say, yes, I'm glad we have competitors. They deliver what they deliver, and we do what we do. But they use a compatibility layer. And the tricky part about the compatibility layer, because it mimics PGSQL based on your PL/SQL. And if your PL/SQL can't be mimicked by the compatibility layer, you have to go back to your target environment and change your PL/SQL over there. Now that means for the normal corporates, it's development, test, and acceptance, and back in production, and from there on you continue your migration. But the other problem is you can only use it with the advanced server of EDB, and that's not an open source Postgres environment. So this combination, yeah, it works, it can work, no discussion about that, but there's a heavy vendor lock-in, because if you want to end your subscription of advanced server, your whole system is gone because you don't have a perpetual license. So you're stuck forever in this environment. And yeah, that's a choice. Every choice is a good choice, but I always say if you go the EDB route, fine, but know what you're choosing for.
It's not open source. In the end, you are in a closed environment and locking yourself into only EDB for the future.
Yeah. So you want to get rid of your vendor lock-in of Oracle and you move to the next vendor lock-in. But
exactly.
Good news with Oracle is it's a perpetual license. You always can continue using your versions you have available. You can't upgrade anymore. But here, yeah, it's stuck forever, and you can't get rid of it because the problem is it emulates. So your people keep on programming in PL/SQL, which is rather strange because you made the choice. I want to go to PostgreSQL.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks a lot. Michel. Well, from here, is there any question about what we've seen so far? If there's any question, the chat is open, so please don't hesitate. No, there's no question so far. Perfect. All right. I think, well, maybe wait a second just in case. But I want to thank everyone very much for your time today and for participating in this event. As you saw, well, ORMIT Cortex is cheaper than free. Going with a free tool comes with a lot of drawbacks and a lot of risks. So it makes a huge difference. And any question in the future, we're here to help. We've done many of these. sometimes customers have been trying to try the Ora2PG, and then they realize, whoa, this is going to be very complicated. Oh, a few questions.
We've got a few questions.
So what about forms and reports who would need to migrate to Java before at the same time, I guess? All right, so for that particular, it's a different case. We do have a tool called ORMIT Java, which is the leader in migrating Oracle functions to Java. It's a very similar approach. That's why we love Cortex so much, because it's exactly in line with our philosophy of first analyze, know exactly what you're getting yourself into, and after put your first step into the project, but you know for sure your project starts today and it's going to end exactly or more or less at a particular time. So great question, Javier, thank you.
Yeah, and it is two-step approach. Yeah? So always start with your forms before starting to migrate your database.
Exactly. Yes,
yeah.
Thank you. Then there is Rob Pickers.
Rob, is the end result functionality equal to the source, and how to guarantee or test that? Great question. If you want to take it,
Mark?
Michel or Mark.
Yeah. We cannot 100% guarantee that, but because we don't know exactly functionality of the application we are migrating, so we can ensure that it's technically 100% the same. And yeah, we need to rely on the functional testing of the customer when we provide them with Postgres database.
So similar to any migration project, you always need to have that testing phase.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. Mark, I believe you wanted to. Okay. So yeah, you need that testing phase. It's a standard testing. So unit testing first, and then you might move to functional testing with end user really testing your functionality against your system.
Yeah, you also have to adapt your application part from Oracle to Postgres.
And I think it's good to say that we at there, when they found things which are not okay functional, then we will change the code.
Yeah, or the partner like RENAPS.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Exact.
And we always advise the client to do also performance testing. If needed, we or the partner are available to see, okay, what needs to be adjusted to get the right performance.
Yeah.
Exact.
And so far, no issues with all the migrations we did, or the partners did.
Thank you. Any other question? I believe we are pretty much good and ready to wrap it up. All right, everyone. Well, thanks a lot, everyone, for your time again today. And if there's any question, we're here. You can ask us anything, anytime. Here are our contact information. All right.
Well, thank you. Have a nice day or evening. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Okay.
Bye.